Welcome in, everybody, to this episode of Southeastern 16. I am here with a good friend, Jack Foster from Rocky Top Insiders, and as you can guess by the name, we're going to be talking some Tennessee on today's episode. Jack, thank you for joining us. Thank you for helping us out today with SEC play starting this weekend.
Yeah, it's one of the best times of the year. It's finally here after 17 games into the season. SEC play is here, and we can get some real deal takeaways from this weekend.
That's a good point because you can see by the title. I don't know if you can see by the title of our video, but the question really is Tennessee, without pretty much a shadow of a doubt, has been the best team in college baseball. I know LSU, for all intensive purposes, has that D1 number one overall ranking. But you just look at the way this Tennessee team plays, they haven't skipped a beat from last year when it comes to their hitting, even with these new faces you're seeing, like the Levi Clarks and Manny Marins and the freshmen that are in, as well as some of the transfers they got. What are your just initial raw thoughts on, can they continue this in SEC play? Because obviously the pitching is going to be a huge upgrade from what they've seen for the most part so far.
Yeah, I'm not going to go out here and say that Tennessee is just going to mow through SEC play like they've done non-conference play. Obviously, I think Tennessee will have, some struggles at times throughout the season, as any SEC team will. But the Vols have such a high floor with their pitching staff this season. I don't think the offense will be as good as a year ago, even though numbers may indicate it's on par, or maybe even better than a year ago. I don't think that'll continue. I think the offense will have some struggles here and there, but the pitching staff is much better than it was a year ago. You arguably have the best pitcher in the country in Liam Doyle throwing for you on Friday nights. Nate Snead is the ultimate Swiss Army knife out of the bullpen, and AJ Russell's not even ramped up yet. You can expect that in April. So this pitching staff has just so many arms and so many weapons. And with Marcus Phillips potentially having a breakout season as well, there's just so many guys to turn to on this pitching staff. So I think Tennessee does have a really high floor and will, be a surefire national championship contender and among the top teams in the league all season long.
That is a really good point with the pitching, and I mean, this has stood out. Obviously, Liam Doyle has been lights out. You're seeing his name being tossed into kind of top
Number
10.
one overall. Yeah.
Yeah, number one overall. Even top 10 was kind from me. And number one overall sort of talks for the 2026 draft. Um, that's something that I don't know if people expected. I know people probably didn't expect it from Liam Doyle, but the pitching rotation and staff as a whole, you had a ton of guys leave from there, just like the lineup. But you've seen the holes kind of plugged for quite honestly the most part, even with the AJ Russell injury, and you haven't seen a lot of him still yet. Liam Doyle's been great. Marcus Phillips, has been pretty excellent for the most part. Talk about how that's going to help these guys, because obviously this weekend you're going to have Liam versus Liam with Liam Peterson and Liam Doyle. That's going to be, get your popcorn out, take a seat and enjoy kind of stuff from those two. You're going to see Aiden King from the Gators, a really good freshman they have who Kevin O'Sullivan loves to go to. He's now pretty much in their starting rotation. You're going to see these great pitchers that both Phillips and Doyle are going to have to go up against it this weekend, and even throughout all of SEC play until the season's over. So how is that? How much is that going to help Tennessee contend with everyone in the league and stuff?
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. The arms are Tennessee's strong suit this year, where it was the bats a year ago. And you mentioned those young arms for Florida. It's going to be tough this weekend, but Doyle, the thing that's made him so special is just the fastball. It's been borderline unhittable. I mean, he's still only given up one earned run this entire season. It's really, and it was just a solo homer from Sanford. Kid put a good swing on a ball and sent it out of the yard. And Lindsey Nelson, I believe, to a short part of the ballpark too. So yeah, it's 20 and a third Liam's innings pitched this year, and he's getting up one earned run, only 6 hits. Some mind-boggling stats he's putting together with his strikeout numbers as well. 47 strikeouts. That's just under 12 strikeouts a game. If you give him 14 regular season starts, which he's projected to do, he will throw 164 strikeouts this regular season. At that pace, would break a program record. He's 77% of his outs have come via strikeout this season. It is absurd what Liam Doyle is doing with his strikeouts so far this year. 0.44 ERA on the season. It's not going to continue quite at this pace, but I think the strikeout numbers will continue to be high for Doyle all season long. It's just how dominant can Doyle be against SEC pitching. I think you saw him be pretty dang good in Houston against Oklahoma State. So I have confidence that Doyle will always have the edge on any given Friday.
Yeah, you also had Arizona in there, a team who's kind of working their way back into some competitive baseball as well. I mean, Tennessee did have that stretch where they played some decent teams
Yeah, too. Yeah.
in Houston. So that's a good point there. I want to swing back to the hitting for a sec. We said right at the beginning of this episode, you know, there were a lot of faces to replace. That's pretty obvious to anyone who follows Tennessee baseball in the slightest. They've been replaced so far. I mean, and a big part of it to me has been the freshmen, not only Levi Clark and Manny Marin, like I mentioned, but also Jay Abernathy still sitting there with a very good year. I mean, 353 average. Has not quite hit a home run yet. We're looking to get him on the board, right, with seemingly everyone else on the team. But still, I mean, he's hitting the ball pretty dang well, right, to start this season. You've talked to Tony Vitello a little bit at this point. What does he have to say about these freshmen, and what are your thoughts on these freshmen who have come in here and just lit the place on fire, hitting the ball?
Yeah, he says they're not freshmen. They don't act like freshmen. They don't carry themselves like freshmen. They carry themselves like upperclassmen, and that's why they're able to, take this role and run with it so far. I mean, you're talking about when you project Tennessee's starting lineup moving forward. I think on average you would have Manny Marin starting at third and Abernathy in left, and for sure Levi Clark a designated hitter. So that is
Mhm.
three true freshmen in your starting lineup every single game. That's really impressive, and it speaks to this insane class Tennessee brought in, this 2024 recruiting class, and the incredible job Tennessee was able to do keeping these guys to get them to campus, especially Levi Clark. Like, this kid should be playing pro ball right now, but he's not. He's at Tennessee, and he's going to be here for 3 years, by the way, in Knoxville. So, a really great get for Tennessee and co. But yeah, these freshmen aren't freshmen. They don't carry themselves like freshmen. They're not playing like it. And, Levi Clark is the name for me. Marin has some good pop, and he's a really smooth defensive third baseman and is a complete player for Tennessee. But Levi Clark's just an absolute game changer. You could argue he's going to be Tennessee's best hitter all season long. It hasn't just been the power numbers. He's shown he can be a complete hitter and just an imposing force in the box. 6 homers on the season, hitting 488. The OPS is insane. Slugging percentage is insane. So I think Levi Clark is going to be that guy. He's hitting 5th in the order right now. I could see a scenario where he actually swaps places with Hunter Ensley and moves up to 3rd to get him some more ABs. But I'd say Levi Clark and Andrew Fisher. I know Gavin Keelan kind of leads the pack in homers right now.
Mhm.
He's 2nd in average. He's probably been Tennessee's best bat when you take everything into account. 17 games into the season. I think that 1-2 punch of Fisher and Clark in the middle of the order, especially with the power, is going to be Tennessee's most dangerous part of the offense this year.
Yeah, Andrew Fisher, that's another good point too. Andrew Fisher, since March has really started, or I'm sorry, since March began, has
Yeah.
really started to hit the long ball well. Something I want to bring up, and it hasn't obviously hurt this team, in the record column whatsoever, but it is something that sticks out a little bit to me. Part of the way you dominate SEC play, as the name states, is playing good defense. You look at Tennessee defensively right now, toward the bottom of the league, just off raw fielding percentage. They have, what is it, 18 errors this season, which is one of the highest in the league. I think only A&M and Missouri are higher with error wise, among teams who have that total. What have you seen fielding wise from this team? Is that much of a concern heading into SEC play for you?
I wouldn't say it's a crazy concern for Tennessee, but it is probably my biggest concern for Tennessee. It's hard to
Mm.
have really any concerns with what Tennessee's done this year. Outscoring opponents, I think 203 to 37, 17 games in. So it's hard to really find some holes. But yeah, infield defense, I would say. I mean, I hate to single a guy out, but it's really been Dean Curley more than anyone. I
Yeah.
think he's struggled defensively more this year than he did last year, and it's a little odd. And it seems like it compounds for him in games. Like, he'll make multiple mistakes in one game or none at all. And I don't know if it's a mental thing. I'm not too worried about it though. But I would say infield defense is maybe the thing that Tennessee will struggle with most. Andrew Fisher's still new at playing first base. I will say he had an incredible game defensively in the midweek against West Georgia at first base, his best game of the year defensively. So that's got to give you, some positive vibes going into SEC play. But yeah, infield defense could be something that hurts Tennessee. And it's strange because infield defense, if Tennessee played a certain group of guys, could be arguably its biggest strength because Ariel Antigua is an absolute wizard at shortstop. He's amazing. He's an MLB level defender at short, and I think Manny is at third. Gavin's pretty dang good at second, and first, like I said, Andrew Fisher looks like he's improving. Could put Curley there. So if Ariel Antigua was in, it wouldn't be a issue at all. But that's just not the case because of his the everyone else is just so much better at the plate who can get
Right.
opportunities. You're not going to start Ariel Antigua more times than not. So I think infield defense could be Tennessee's worst trait this year. Cannon Peebles has improved behind the plate, but yeah, that could be Tennessee's Achilles heel at times, just like it was last year, honestly, with Billy at third and Sema at second sometimes.
Yeah, Dalton Bargo, another guy, a little bit of a fair share of errors, right, with 3 this year so far.
Yeah.
People's being better behind the plate. That I'm gonna go into that for a second. One thing Florida has done a little differently this year than they did last year is steal bases a little more. They have 31 this year. You look at that team last year; they were not stealing as much. They just weren't. And of course, that team, that Florida team was in a rut seemingly all season
Yeah.
up until the NCAA tournament when they just turned it up a notch. This year, only losses right now, Miami. They did win that series though, and then UCF. They had a bad midweek game against UCF. Besides that, they pretty much have had a lot of success. And this recent game against Florida State they had in the midweek. I don't know if you caught any of it, but that
Caught the
man,
end.
I think if that bullpen plays the way they did against Florida State, a really good lineup for a lot of this weekend, it's gonna be game on between these two teams. Genuinely, what with going back though to people's behind the plate, with a team that steals a lot more than it did last year, how you're gonna see teams like this. Kentucky is a team that steals a lot, and there's teams in the SEC that just do it a lot and whatnot. How big is that? Compared to last year with Cal Stark. What kind of comparisons do you draw between the two, and how has Peoples helped to fill that space?
Yeah, Cal Stark was an interesting scenario because I don't think Cal Stark was just overly great at catching runners at second or third, like throwing
Mhm.
across the diamond. He was just amazing at that back pick at first. That was
Yeah,
his like trademark, right? So
right.
almost, I don't know the exact numbers, but I would honestly say that over half of his caught stealings were the back picks, maybe even more, like maybe 75%. It was just what he did all the time. So Cannon Peebles doesn't quite have that in his arsenal, right? But I think
Mhm.
Cannon Peebles is actually better at throwing across the diamond and getting runners stealing at second or third. I think he has a little bit better arm for those longer throws. And he's done really well so far this year. He's caught 6 runners stealing. Believe that's correct. And
Mhm.
Cannon Peebles isn't going to start every game at catcher. Stone Lawless will get one nod.
Right.
And I don't think Lawless is as good as Peebles defensively, but you could argue he's been. I mean, I think numbers wise, he has been better at the plate, and maybe he will continue to be. Um, but yeah, I think that's something that can improve for Tennessee this year is just catching runners at second, maybe. But it's always going to be easier to run on Tennessee's pitchers. It's just kind of been the thing in the Tony and Frank era, Tony Vitello, Frank Anderson era here at Tennessee. And Saturday is the day I would circle because Marcus Phillips has been, run on a lot
Mhm.
this year. So maybe on Friday and Sunday, Tennessee can handle it a little bit better. And I would say that Cannon starts those 2 days, right? Friday and Sunday. But on Saturday is the day I would circle. Maybe you watch Florida's, stealing bases a little bit more that day, given who's on the mound for Tennessee and who's behind the plate.
Yeah, keep in mind, any Tennessee fans that watch this video, Florida does have a lot of guys that have stolen bases. I mean, this isn't like one guy who's killing it. This is spread out amongst everyone in their lineup.
Yeah.
Guys like Blake Sear, Hayden Yost, Bobby Boser, all these guys are going out there and stealing bases. So important to watch that this weekend. Jack, we're gonna wrap this up. Give me your final thoughts. Just your final thoughts on the question: can Tennessee continue this domination? And your thoughts as well about this weekend. I mean, this is the biggest series in all of college baseball, pretty much. So, wrap this thing up for us. What do you got to say about this weekend and SEC play?
Yeah, the reasons I think Tennessee can continue its domination are as I said earlier, what Liam Doyle is doing on the mound on Fridays gives Tennessee such a good start any given series. I think Andrew Fisher's recent power streak is going to continue, and he's going to be Tennessee's best home run hitter, best power bat in the lineup, an absolute game changer. And you give Levi Clark right behind him in the order, man, that's a dangerous combo. So
Mhm.
that combo, Liam Doyle and Nate Snead out of the bullpen, being used multiple times in a weekend, is going to be really dangerous. I'm most intrigued to watch Tannner Franklin, the bullpen guy on Fridays, who's kind of been the stack with Doyle, how he does against SEC bats, and Marcus Phillips, how he does in his first SEC starts. It's probably my two biggest storylines entering this weekend. And then offensively for Tennessee, beyond Fisher and Clark, can Curley and Keelan, be remotely close to what Semo and Blake were as a 1-2 punch to
Mhm.
lead off for Tennessee last year. Some people are saying, hey, Curley and Keeling, they could end up being better numbers wise. I'm pumping the brakes big time on that. I don't think
Right.
that's going to be the case. Keelan's just coming off his worst weekend of the year. So can
Mhm.
Curley and Keelan really be a consistent 1-2 punch in this lineup for Tennessee is something I'm also watching. But like I said earlier, high floor for Tennessee. I think they will be a top SEC team all year. I'm not predicting a sweep this weekend in Knoxville, but given home field advantage and the fact Tennessee's just really hot right now, I do think Tennessee can win this series close in 2 of 3 games.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for that, Jack. Keep in mind, everybody, we will be doing predictions for not only Florida and Tennessee, sort of like we did here, although we mostly talk Tennessee. But we'll be doing predictions for all the good series this weekend: Texas A&M, Alabama, Arkansas, Ole Miss. Be sure to continue watching and sticking with us here at Southeastern 16 for all coverage on SEC sports. Thank you, Jack Foster from Alfred Ezman. You're watching Southeastern 16.